Welcome to the Counterweight podcast. I am Doug Rogers, Chief Revenue Officer and Managing Partner for Waypoint Healthcare Solutions. And I'm joined weekly by my co-host, James Kanary, founder and owner of the Upper Right Corner. Together, we are focused on speaking to and learning from growth leaders across the healthcare space about their journeys and lessons learned. James and I want to explore how growth leaders manage this tension, not only for their teams, but also with their leaders and in many cases, board members and investors. We will discuss with our guests the career journey they have been on, key influences that helped them put them into the position they are today. We will talk about successes and challenges, what they learned from these events for themselves and for their teams. Join us each week for a new episode with our guest. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn under the name The Counterweight Podcast. Subscribe, like, follow, and give us feedback as we go along. Now on to the show. Welcome to The Counterweight. We are excited to have another session. My name is Doug Rogers, and I am joined by my co-host, James Kanary, who is a proud supporter of all things sports in Kansas City, most notably KC Current.
Go Current.
I'm sure we'll hear more about this as we go through the pod, but that's not the focus, because the focus is Chris Kemp, who is our guest today. We could not be more pleased. He may have stopped in and put something on the whiteboard.
Yeah, he actually wrote. It's weird. It was in my office when I got here. Someone must have wrote it. I don't know what happened.
Yeah,
I like
stealthy.
It makes a nice backdrop. I mean, I'll
be
honest,
guys. We don't do that for just anyone, Chris Kemp. You are special.
That is a true statement. We've never done that for anyone. So I don't know.
Now every guest is going to demand their. Here we go. Everybody's going to demand their little spot on the whiteboard. Here we go.
I can
so
absolutely.
You're the first, Chris. You're the first.
Yeah.
And I can't think of anyone more appropriate than you, because you are a superstar. Huge fan of yours.
Mm-hmm.
The three of us have known each other a long time, but we haven't worked together in a long time.
Yeah.
So we're super excited to get caught up today, and I know our listeners are going to be really thrilled to hear your perspective, what you've been learning, what you're working on, and a view into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that being said, Chris, why don't you just give us a perspective, give our listeners a perspective, where you are right now, what is your role, who you are, et cetera, and then we'll dive right into all the fun and exciting questions.
Absolutely. And first of all, guys, great to be here. Thanks for having me. I was honored when you guys approached me on this, and I think what you guys are doing here to really help elevate health IT sales and sales leadership is fantastic here in Kansas City, and kind of getting this out. So thanks for everything you guys are doing and for having me. So right now I'm about 4.5 months into a new company and role. I work for
Congratulations.
Feels like yesterday, but it's been 4.5 months, so I'm a little bit smarter, I hope. So my role, I'm the Senior Vice President of the provider health market, so for MultiPlan. So MultiPlan's about a 40-plus-year-old company. Most of our business we've done over the years is through the payers. So we started life as a network company, so we've been curating networks through our 1.4 million providers for a long time. We have a very robust payment revenue integrity capability to help those pre and post pay. We're probably best known for our out-of-network negotiation services, so helping lower those high-cost out-of-network claims that we work between payers and providers. And more recently, have really gotten into kind of the AI and the data and decision science through some acquisitions, things around price transparency, looking at really how to help make some better decisions when it comes to revenue type of things through all the robust claims data, looking at how we optimize health plans. So when we go talk to employers or TPAs, helping to offer those types of solutions that can help provide best cost, best quality health plans. So I'm here really to kind of now, all right, we've been doing this, and we were trying to reboot the company to really become more of a growth-oriented company. We do business with all the major payers, so you name them, United, Cigna, Aetna, and then a lot of the regionals, TPAs, brokers, employers, and then I'm here to basically open up the lens as to how we get to the hospitals, health systems, and basically work with them on ways to bend the cost curve. That's really what we're there. And so very noble mission of how to bend the cost curve. So,
heck yeah. Oh man, we need a little help there, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
The cost of healthcare.
I've heard that healthcare is expensive.
Yeah,
just a smidge.
Yeah, that's right.
Especially out of network.
Wow.
Let's not even talk about that.
That's
So I mean,
terrible.
Chris, this is a big deal. We're talking about millions of lives. We're talking about millions, if not billions of dollars, changing hands here. The payers have been at it a while. The providers are becoming, in some ways, more like payers. The payers are becoming more like providers in this new world we're in. What drew you to this company, and kind of what do you think your mission is here?
Well, I think there was a number of things. So before I had joined here in the last 4.5 months, I was pivoting out of a kind of a startup world for several years at a AI company that was focused on hospital operations, and was about to make a pivot, and then started having some conversations. And I think what really drew me to this opportunity was it was a very established company with a very great track record of really innovative solutions over time that are really making a difference. When you look at, as I said, bending that cost curve, how do we level the playing field? And really was, I think when I've looked back in my career, the most enjoying roles I've had, and it even dates back to my last stint at Cerner when we kind of launched the federal market, was really launching a new market. It was really getting into something net new that, you knew could make a difference, and that you could, wear a variety of hats, kind of help create the strategy, help build the, kind of the market around it. And I think when I kind of looked at this and really looked, this could be a really key arm to the future of what MultiPlan was trying to do. That was very interesting. Culturally, this was I thought it was a great fit after I talked to a number of people. Really, culture. I'm a huge culture guy. I mean, that's just kind of like you gotta. I get up motivated every day with people that are fun to be with and like to solve really hard problems. And that's
I was going to ask. Culture is such a big word. Like, it means maybe something different to everyone. What is it? What do you look for when you look for a company and you're trying to also create a culture as a leader? But what are you looking for? Maybe start with that, and then what are you looking to kind of create with your team?
Well, I think first and foremost, you want to make sure that you're working with people that are passionate about the cause. So if you're coming into it and you really don't have some of those fundamentals, I would be concerned. But so really, I think it's working with people that are passionate, that you like to work with every day, that are intelligent, that are, as I mentioned, are motivated to get up and solve a big, hard problem every day. You gotta go to work, enjoying who you work with. I think it's a big thing. I think for the company we have here, I think at MultiPlan, it's been a very passionate group. As I call it, we're a stitched kind of ecosystem of acquisitions over time. So we kind of are different pieces of a quilt, if you will. So, some people have been here. It was almost like Cerner back in 2000, guys. It was like, oh yeah, I've been here 20 years, 25 years. We just had someone celebrate their 32nd. I'm like, wow. So this is like, you get some people that have really been doing this a long time. They love what they do. I think from a culture perspective, though, you also want to make sure, that you're focused on that it's a growth mindset. I think that's what we're really focused on right now as a company is, we've done a lot of great work. We've been well established in many markets, but my challenge right now, and those of us that have come to the company, is really, all right, it's not about the status quo. It's not just about continuing the great work we're doing, but how do we really evolve the company? How do we create that growth mindset, the accountability, and set the stage for the next phase of growth and evolution? Because I think if you don't evolve and you don't grow, that's a bad recipe. So I think as we look ahead, I'm a big proponent of a growth culture. I think we got indoctrinated with that at Cerner. If you're not growing, you're dying. So you got to evolve. And so I think that's the biggest challenge right now, is taking all the great things that we've done and all the capabilities we have, but now injecting that growth mindset as we move ahead as a company.
So Chris, we certainly want to talk about how you think about the go-to-market here in one moment, but I want to continue the thread that James started and guide me here. Not to put words in your mouth, but I get the impression part of the reason why you were brought into MultiPlan is to be a culture change agent, right? I mean, there's certainly probably a lot of goodness in terms of how this organization has developed, how has this grown, but we all know that every organization has different phases. And is it fair to say, and why don't you talk a little bit of it if this is the case? It feels like you're there to inject a different tempo and energy for how the business thinks about the next year, the next 5 years, whatever that may be.
I think you're absolutely right. And you hit the nail on the head, Doug. And I think, I think you take for granted some things you've had in life to this point. I think we, growing up in the Cerner culture and even the small company I was at before here, so going from a 20-odd thousand person company to a 300 person company, we had a lot of rigor. We had a lot of process. We had a lot of just ingrained in kind of that quarter to quarter, year to year expectations. And if you're not doing this, you better have a lot of good reasons why. So you're absolutely right. I mean, MultiPlan, I think as we've kind of gotten involved, this is a publicly traded company. I mean, there was no rigor around forecast. There's no rigor around deal review. There's no rigor around, kind of the evolution of the sales process and how we're managing that. Very weak utilization of CRM tools. So I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there's myself and a number of the others that have come here are here to help really inject that into the mindset. I think just like anything else, you're gonna have the folks that are gonna evolve and be a part of that. You're probably going to have some level of attrition, but I think it is absolutely, I think, part and parcel to not just creating the market that I'm accountable for, but even our legacy markets that we have been very successful. We've got to sit down and do road mapping with them. We've got to go in and do quarterly business reviews. We've got to go in and make sure that it's not just pushing the wheel, but we're actually helping them think about the future and how are we aligned with that? How are we making sure that we're following what their strategic roadmap is and aligning to it? So both from a new business and an existing client base, it's absolutely, I would say a rethinking and an injection of how do we become a true growth and a client first company. Hey, it's all about we are here to serve the clients, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Well, what would your advice be, Chris, to, we've got a lot of chief growth officers or aspiring chief growth officers, sales leaders, others who may be in that same position right now or soon to be, where they've got to go into a new company or they've got to help inject some new thinking into their existing company, whatever that is. Like, what's your advice, like how to approach that without, being the bull in the china shop? Or maybe it is being the bull in the china shop. I don't know. What's kind of been your approach? What's gone well? What's maybe not gone so well and so far as you're a few months in, as far as how you assess the business, how you implement changes, how you share new ideas? Just how's that going?
No, I think it's going well as a whole. I would say, to your point, it's probably a mix between a little bit of a bull in the china shop to make sure that people understand how you think. And if you engage in calls that might sound a little bit somewhat not maybe abrasive, but that you're being pretty invasive, that they understand that's going to be the expectation, that, there's just baselines that you are expected to have when you come to the table to talk about deals or talk about strategy. And if not, don't be offended if there's going to be, new thoughts, new ideas and, I guess, elevated accountability as to what you're expected to do and deliver. But I also think, just like anything else, I mean, I probably spent the first 4 weeks doing a lot of listening, just a lot of fly on the wall, providing just some feedback, but you certainly want to be thoughtful about it without being, like I'm the know-it-all coming into something brand new. And I think the other interesting thing was I've lived my whole life on the provider side, right? I mean, I'd listen to more. I tell you, I was well prepared. Well, I don't know if we're well prepared, but I knew a lot more about podcasts. I've listened to so much about the payer community than I ever have in the last 4 months. And it's like, oh my, I mean, my stint with this, probably like many people are, well, I got my annual health plans. I got to decide what I'm going to do with the family. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to basically, I also wanted to learn. So I, really grasped a lot of what we do because it was a different side of healthcare that, I think just didn't spend as much time with. So I did a lot of learning, but at the same time, I think you have to put the anchor down. People have to know where you stand. They have to know what your philosophy is. They have to know what your expectations are. And granted, this was me influencing probably others that were in some of the adjacent markets, but also kind of what I was doing to help lay the groundwork so that we were going to be able to use, some foundational elements to really create a change mindset in the culture, I guess.
Right on.
So,
By the way, we are a agnostic podcast here. We appeal to the provider world, the payer world, the payvider world. We'll talk to anybody in healthcare, but you're right. I mean, it is a different mindset, right? When you've spent your career on the provider side, now you're kind of going to a more traditionally payer focused company that might think a little bit differently, operate a little bit differently. Just some new thinking there. So
absolutely.
Yeah,
definitely spurred some things. I'm like, I've always said, I think this is the most important thing over time is, and I've heard others tell me this too, and it was something I've just always remembered is be a student of healthcare. Like if you're not always learning and you're not always kind of trying to, even if it's first thing in the morning before you just get on with your day, is like reading a couple of things that are just insightful about what's going on in the state of healthcare.
Well, and I want to key on that for a moment, and especially for our listeners, I think this is such an important takeaway, which is it does not matter what level you're at. Your success is built on constantly being a student, constantly looking to learn. And Chris, one of the things that you said that really just resonated with me, you stepped into this role. You're a senior executive. You're a leader. One of the first things that you did is you surrounded yourself with knowledge. You listened to podcasts, you read articles, you immersed yourself so that then you could not necessarily be an expert, but you could be knowledgeable and then bridge the gap with the other people in the organization as you start to have those hard conversations. Let's talk for a moment. So as you said, you're 4.5 months in. You're tasked with breaking into a new market. How do you think about that from a go-to-market perspective? And I would highlight, I suspect that there is a barrier to overcome, because I would almost think that your target client, the health system, is going to be skeptical of a vendor that predominantly works with the payer. So how are you thinking about that navigation? What are the things that you're putting into place or trying to do to really broker those conversations, if you will, with your target market?
Great question. And it's something I think about every day because it's something that you just don't do once and just, you're always refining. And, 2 months ago, I probably would have given you a different answer. And now I'm 2 months later, I probably would give you a different answer. The first thing I think is dangerous is just, I think you don't want to bite off too much. You don't want to boil the ocean. You want to really find out, all right, if we're going to go tackle a segment of what is a very large market, what is that going to be and why? For us, it was really, I think we have aspirations to serve as much as we can across the provider community, whether that's major health systems, community hospitals, clinics. But we're really grounding what we're focused on as far as solutions to the rural health market. That's where we're starting.
Okay. So that's your ideal client persona right now.
As we stand right now, I would say it's a mix of both the rural health market, because there's a lot of challenges there. It's underserved by businesses. There are some, but definitely not, that are aligning long term on kind of how we can help level that playing field. Because if you look at, for example, one of the core things we are looking to roll out as we move ahead to 25 is going to be pricing analytics and really helping. How do we help with respect to contracts with payers? And if you look at the data, rural hospitals are paid less than what you see in the metro areas, and vice versa. Or there's just different dynamics that I think could really help in that market. But it's also then identifying the adjacent players, like the state health organizations, these national organizations that are helping represent all that. So I think, we're looking, not just at the rural health market, but the adjacent organizations that can help and that are interested in helping solve these problems. And then I would also say, just from a scale perspective, it's also, just like we did for a lot of time, my last couple of roles, really finding some strategic partners that you could work with that are in parallel with you to try to grow either their business and adjacent business to provide capabilities. So I think it's a mix of inorganic and organic growth strategies. And then again, I think as we go quarter to quarter, we're going to continue to calibrate. We're going to look, and if something's failing, fail fast.
Sure.
And then let's pivot. Let's call the next play. Let's not do paralysis by analysis, and let's go. So, but for us, it was really segmenting. We've done a lot of work to really help cultivate in the rural health space, both from a partner perspective, but from a national organization perspective with the National Rural Health Association. It has really led us to some early meaningful conversations to where we're going to test some things out, really try to create some outcomes, because I think in this market, it's more important. They don't align around a company name or a product. It's about what did you do for them? And if it works, they're going to line up behind it. It's going to be like, okay, you did this, you really helped our bottom line. Boom. So we're really at this point investing in outcomes, really looking at some folks that we can work with to showcase, to work with these senior leadership teams of these smaller hospitals, and then use that as kind of our platform to go up.
No, I think that that's super helpful. And one, I applaud you. I would actually say for our listeners, Chris, you made it sound easy, but this is a hard thing to do, which is to identify your ideal client persona or profile and line up behind that. Doesn't mean that you can't fail fast and iterate, but there's a lot of people out there you can go talk to. That spreads yourself thin. You've created focus. You've created a value proposition. You have a playbook to go run, and now you can actually measure, is this thesis proving true? I would continue on that thread and recognizing, right, you're 4.5 months in. It is gone by quickly, but in this time frame, how are you thinking, and what are the actions you're taking to actually get in front of the right personas in these hospitals to have the conversation? Is it you're showing up at conferences? Is it you're just picking up the phone and calling and say, hey, here's who I am, here's what I'm trying to do, some combination of what's working for you right now to get these conversations going?
So I think, there were some early stage discussions happening in this space when I joined. I've just really tried to kind of put some muscle under it. Yeah. And we've also got a few key partners in this space that have been working in this for a while that we're working with, and that, have built some real brand equity, or not brand equity, but, quality equity with these entities. And so I think part of it's been heavy engagement in the National Rural Health Association itself. So they represent not all, but many of the critical access or rural hospitals across the country. And then that has led to, some conference attendance. I think it's also led to some direct conversations with, as you expect, just like we did early on at Cerner. You meet these visionary CEOs that are, hey, I have an idea on Monday. I want to implement it by Friday. It's like that's good thinking. You want that kind of a thought. So again, it's kind of led to some early stage conversations. I think one of the things we need to do a investment in as we kind of move ahead to 25 is we really need to invest in more of the top of the funnel pipeline growth. That's an area that my previous company had invested a lot of that BDR work to really help, grow the volume of at-bats that you're wanting to get to try to build a meaningful pipeline and long-term growth trajectory. But I think in the state we're at, I think that will be helpful as we have some tangible outcomes that we can then take to market, to platforms. Whether it's through webinars, we're planning to do some meaningful engagement next year that we've never done in organizations like Becker's, and they're fantastic. I think on the provider side, when you look at kind of what we're doing, as it pertains to the revenue cycle space, HFMA. So we're going to amplify across, I would say, market, leading conferences and consortiums as well as then direct engagement. So it's going to be a mix of both.
Yeah, feels like
as we look ahead.
timing is everything there, though, right? Like you said, you got to have some inroads and some proof points for certain types of audiences. Because if you spend a bunch on outreach and marketing conferences, and they say, okay, who's doing this? Who like us is doing this? If you have that type of buyer, feels like you may need to be a little bit further along. So how do you I am pretty skeptical on the top of funnel stuff. Like I feel like there's just a lot of wasted energy on email marketing and BDRs and cold calls and stuff. So how do you sort of calibrate that? And when's that right time to make that investment?
Well, and again, I mean, looking through the lens of our company now, I think we broadly need it because we have some well-established markets that probably need some of that uplift. But to your point, I mean, my experience on when that is successful is when you actually have and can amplify things like white papers or client testimony and things that truly are going to move the meter. I agree with you. I mean, blind outreach and not having a method to the madness to me makes no sense because you're going to have a bunch of meetings or, people that are going to potentially take your call, but what are you going to actually bring that's of value at that point? So I think that's why, I mean, I look at the rest of this year, which is quickly going to be over here in the next 2.5 months. And to me, it's about, we need to go get some true tangible outcomes in this market so that we can amplify that for 25 and truly capitalize on that as we grow a top line, or a top of the funnel to things that actually come to meaningful contracts and long-term client relationships. So,
I would say that's what you just described there, Chris, is I think one of the hardest things for especially a new leader, for those of our listeners who have the opportunity to go from either an individual contributor and they're stepping into a leadership role, or even more so, you're leading a team and then you jump into an SVP or CXO role. You can feel like I have to go so fast. I've got to deliver all this. I have to do it now. I got to figure out how to get 30 people to talk to me, have a pipeline that looks like this. And really, it is more important to build the plan, articulate the layers that you're going to go execute, and then start working it in a methodical fashion. And when I say articulate, you've got to be able to articulate it up so the people around you have confidence, and then articulate it down so the people that are part of your team have confidence. And I mean, that's what I'm hearing you say, if you will, which is, I think, just an important piece of wisdom for our listeners to take in, if you will, for how they think about stepping into this type of role. What do you look for? Because you're in a team building exercise right now. As you ultimately expand out your team, what are the things that are important to you that says, hey, this individual has the best chance to be successful when I hire them into the role?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say, and I'm kind of looking at this, even though we're 40 years old, what I'm doing is kind of a startup within a company, which is some things I've done in the past. And I think, we're obviously in a new logo growth phase, right? I mean, you got to have hunters, you got to have people that are absolutely focused on establishing initial client relationships and beachheads, I think. But you also have to look at the long term too. And I think as you look at, folks that kind of come in with more an entrepreneurial mindset or are prepared to, do multiple roles, as you might think, kind of out of the gate as you grow and, get the needed investment when you execute. But you also want to have a lens for the leadership too, right? So you want to make sure that you're also looking at folks that, and again, not, you're going to have the folks that want to continue to be the individual contributor, but also folks that you can start to, really look at the lens through, okay, well, if we add X over the next 12 to 24 months, who's going to be the next guy or gal up, right? So I think it's a mix of both. I think you have to have, at this point, I'm really focused on people that are just interested in truly cultivating and growing fast, but also a lens for the future and leadership. I think cultural alignment obviously has got to be key. I mean, I've always said, I don't know, can't speak for you guys, but in the first 5 or 7 minutes of a conversation, you can pretty much flush out kind of where you think culturally and personally or personality wise they stand. So I think having that alignment makes a lot of sense, and is valuable too. So a couple of thoughts as I'm looking at that. So
I was gonna kind of shift us a little bit.
Okay.
To do a little bit of a look back.
Yeah.
With Chris about kind of how he got here. But before we do that, I want to take a moment to give a shout out to a few of our sponsors. So I'll start with the upper right corner. Doug, you'll take Waypoint and then the Echelon after that. So the upperrightcorner.com, check it out. If you need help with growth strategy, go to market, strategic alignment, training, interim leadership, check out the upper right corner.
Yeah, fantastic. And I can personally vouch for the upper right corner. I am not just a fan, but I'm a participant in their coaching and well, take that for what it is. But it's been a great experience. I would like to give a shout out to Waypoint Healthcare Solutions, proud to sponsor the Counterweight as well. And Waypoint is focused on helping health systems with patient engagement, patient experience, patient navigation, and bringing key technologies, voice AI, care orchestration to those discussions and building strategies that really drive change for that patient experience. The Counterweight is honored to be sponsored by the Echelon by Amy Teskey. The Echelon is intentional about building community and sharing expertise for healthcare technology sellers and leaders. The Echelon provides members curated content, educational materials, and the ability to connect with peers and leaders specific to healthcare technology. Sales can be hard. It is made easier when you are part of a community that is focused on enabling you to be your best. Take an opportunity to invest in yourself. Join the Echelon. Use the code Counterweight and gain the ability to participate for the first 30 days at no cost. Thank you to Amy Teskey and the Echelon for your sponsorship. Now back to the episode.
Yeah. And I know, Chris, you have been a fan of and a participant of the Echelon, and Amy and the team and the work that they're doing there. Thumbs up, hopefully, from your perspective as well on the Echelon.
I was glad you guys came together with Amy and her crew. That's again, I'm really energized, especially post Cerner career, kind of what's happening around the Midwest here, and focusing on how we cultivate a broader community of healthcare IT leaders and aspiring leaders. And I think this is great to see all this talent kind of coming together. So it's good.
I just, as a quick aside, James, I know you want to take a look back. I want to make a color comment that kind of just occurred to me as you were saying that, Chris. When we were together at Big Co, we had that community because this is an artifact of that particular time. We had a campus, people were on the campus, and I know one of the things I benefited from was the common cafeteria area. I spent more time meeting people, having conversations, people that were not on my team, that were on different teams, learning from them, etc. And when I left, I did not appreciate how much that was going to be a deficit, not having that. And so, I will agree, Chris, a shout out to Digital Health KC, to the Echelon, to these communities they're building, because I feel like they are recreating that, but at scale, to actually have that shared experience, even if it is something that's not always planned or that you expect. There's that opportunity now that was not there before.
And Doug, I think you bring up a great point. I mean, I've since departing Cerner at the end of 21-ish, and especially I think we all obviously will always remember the COVID times, but it has really changed the dynamics, and I think it's you have to work that much harder to not be on the island and to stay engaged and, work from the home office, but especially in city, like my company's not based out of Kansas City, I'm sure, and so we took for granted, I think for many years, hey, let's go to the office, let's get together, let's have a strategy session, let's have a water cooler conversation, let's have beer Friday. You had that framework to do that. And I think, as not just a leader, but as a contributor, I mean, we have to be that much more forthright in our engagement to make sure that you're, making up for what's not there today in this kind of different environment. So that's a great point. And these types of these organizations, like you said, the Echelon, what you guys are doing, it helps a lot.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to be intentional. That whole, the physical, like, oh, there's a cafe where everybody goes and sees each other. You may not have that at your company. If you're at an early stage company or a startup, or you've got an individual, office here like I do. But what I value is when I walk outside this door, there's other growth-oriented companies and leaders that I bump into almost every day. When I go to an Echelon event, just like the other night, we see people, we connect. My advice, and whether you're hitting it out of the park or you're struggling, wherever you are on your journey, like find community, find community of people that you can lean on. And whether it's Echelon, whether it's, we do cohorts with the upper right corner with Echelon and others. I mean, there's formal and informal ways to do it. Just jump in. You'll be amazed. Digital Health KC, their events are fantastic. The community that's coming together, find that community because you're going to need it. Even if you're killing it right now, even if you're hitting it out of the park, blowing out your numbers, everything's going perfectly, you're still going to need it. Share what you're learning, share your insights with others, and then ask for help. If you need help and you're struggling, boy, I wish I would have done that a couple years ago when I was trying to lead private equity-backed companies. Of course, COVID didn't help, but just going outside of my bubble, realizing that I don't have to do it by myself. I don't have to bootstrap everything and figure everything out on my own. So go out
when
and
you
seek that community.
And when you take on new roles or you started a new company and you're trying to figure out the next big thing, it helps to have people around you that can give you, at least thoughts and feedback, so you don't feel like you're doing things in a vacuum either.
That's right.
There's nothing. I think that's what I've really enjoyed about it is, hey, look, I can. For every good idea I thought I had, I have 10 people going, Camp, you don't want to do that. That's really stupid. Like, don't do that. You're like, oh, glad I asked.
So take us back, James.
Yeah, let's go back to the beginning, Chris. And we know you fairly well. You are like a multi-talented individual. You have a background in music. You have an appreciation for the arts. You're just like a jack of all trades. You're one of those people, you drive me nuts, by the way, that you're good at everything you do. You really drive me
about that.
So like,
we call that a Renaissance man.
The Renaissance man here.
He's a Renaissance
man.
Yes.
Why go into sales? Why healthcare? Kind of, how did you start your journey?
Well, I will say I got into the IT by intention and healthcare by accident. I mean, so I was the very first client rep program at Cerner back in 1999. So
really,
I'm truly dating myself. We were the first ones, and I guess we're kind of the impetus for what happened for decades after that. So for that, I was very thankful. I mean, honestly, I was kind of looking at where I really wanted to ground myself. I'd been out of college for a year. I had lived in Australia actually prior to that, and just did some internships and some things after college, and came back, and parents were like, well, you really need to get a job because you need money. Like, yeah, you're right. So happened to interview at Cerner, and I had done some sales oriented things back in high school. Like I had a lawn mowing company, like probably half of people did. I was at a golf club, managing the cart barns and all that stuff. So it was did that kind of stuff. But it really was the first kind of formal training, which I think was great. And then I always say the leadership was kind of the battlefield promotion, right? It's when you look at the lessons learned, it's always like, you got to push yourself to learn, leadership skills too, because you just never know what's going to happen. And I always say that Cerner was an right? It's like, oh yeah, well, you have a team now.
Yeah.
Have fun with that.
Yeah. But you proved yourself you're being really modest. So I want to make sure our listeners know, like you had to prove yourself as an individual contributor first. Mm-hmm. It's not like just they would give you more. You had to prove yourself. So you were the guy. Like when we needed pharmacy, CPOE, MedRec, anything related to the process of medication management and pharmacy, like Chris was who we brought in as our SME sales, kind of, super sales, to help us get that part of those deals done. And I think one of the first ones we worked on was Northern Arizona healthcare. So lots of trips out to Northern Arizona. So out to the Flagstaff trip. So it's super fun.
Who's at Northern Arizona now? Heather Gleason.
Oh,
no
fantastic!
kidding.
We need to have Heather on the show.
We should have her on the
Last
podcast.
she passed.
Yeah, she'll be like, dang it, this pharmacy thing that Chris Kemp does.
That's right.
So, but you had to prove yourself. You obviously did that, and then more opportunity, more responsibility was sort of put on.
Yeah, I was probably, I know, if people follow certain paths, mine kind of, to your point, after that I started in kind of the pharmacy medication process. Then I went, they kind of got rid of that whole structure for a while, and it was, hey, now you have a territory, go sell an entire EHR. It's like, okay, so we got teams of that, so both client dev and then Premier. So I had both. So I got exposed to both the installed plus new, and then kind of got back into more, I would say, new market growths. So I think one of the other interesting opportunities I had was when we did the acquisition of Clairvia and got us into the workforce management. That really got me working with the co-founder there of a small company who is now part, and we were kind of trying to grow this from the grounds up, both for outside Cerner's base and in Cerner's base. That kind of was an interesting, run, as we had an office down in Durham, and then finally federal. I mean, that was just like, again, you're getting parachuted into Germany, and you don't speak German, so you had to learn, federal contracting, you had to learn partnerships, you had to learn capture management, all this stuff that's like, what is that? We never did anything like that. So, and that got you to working with the government. So it did give you a lot of different perspectives over time. And I guess I always say I kind of got to try a lot. That's why I said earlier, like we said earlier, like what really has driven me was not doing kind of what the main thing a company does, but helping launch new markets, new elements that are kind of a new growth strategy. And I think that's what's been most interesting to me over time.
Yeah. Have you always been wired that way? Of you like the kind of creative side, the net new, go create the new type thing?
I probably liked a little bit more chaos than people probably routinely don't. It's kind of you're kind of looking at all the different buckets you got to do to kind of figure out how this. I always say it's like you're driving the car while you're building it and you're paving the road at the same time. So it's kind of like you're doing all of that, and you're defining. I mean, it was. I just go back to the federal at Cerner. It was like nobody. We had people that were getting into it. We kind of went after, obviously, the big DoD contract. We've been doing stuff over time, but we really had to go figure out, like, what do we need as an infrastructure to go actually work on this stuff? Like, this isn't like walking into the CIO's office and go, here's your contract. Nope. We had to go build out the entire framework. We had to build a partner ecosystem. We had to go figure out how to actually engage the government so we could actually try to sell stuff. So it was, it's just, I mean, to me, I always liked figuring out the answer key. That was kind of to your point, it's a little bit chaos. And then over time, of course, you got to have structure, you got to get organization, you got to have operational elements. And I think that obviously follows, assuming you're successful in scale and scaling. So I think, I don't know, that's just always where I just felt most comfortable.
One of the things that, and I did not appreciate this in the moment, but I think was unique about Cerner at the time is how entrepreneurial the different groups were. So big company, infrastructure, global organization. But Chris, as you just described, many of the stops that you had were almost at like small startups, probably poorly funded, big aspirations, connected to a bigger partner, even though you were in the business. And the success was largely on your shoulders to go create enough momentum, enough appetite for more funding, more infrastructure to come afterwards. And I did not appreciate that, but the lessons you learn, the grit you learn in that process pays dividends everywhere else that you go.
Well, and I think you got to give a lot of credit to Neil in that. I mean, that was his thinking, right? Like, I mean, I'll just go back to one other one I forgot that I had a stop off for 2 years was when we launched the RX station and the medication cabinet business. I mean,
Yeah.
Neil
Making
never
physical
we actually
hardware.
were writing checks
Yeah.
for steel and plastic and selling stuff that basically Pixis had 80% of the market, right? And it was like, it ended up brokering a relationship with them. At the end of the day, Neil never got into the business to take over the market. He wanted to disrupt it. And I think that was what was really cool. And to your point, not everybody's going to go throw money at something that's, not going to take off and be the biggest thing, or have the opportunity to be the biggest thing. But at the end of the day, it did change the market, and it got people thinking about integration and thinking about patient safety and all these things that I think, that's what Cerner did.
We're not really being talked about at the time.
Yeah.
It was like, just go install these cabinets and just pull the meds, and was like, well.
So you had quite a unique experience as you went through these iterations of roles at Bigco, if you will. You ultimately transitioned out, if I remember correctly, and you went to a smaller startup on the hospital operations side. Just give our listeners a perspective of what felt familiar, because you were in these entrepreneurial kind of start things from the ground up, if you will, and then going to a smaller startup. So I'm sure there was familiarity, but what was different? What surprised you when you went from big to small and stepped into that leadership role?
No, great. It's a great question. And it's one that you would, you'd think about some common answers, but that it actually, some of it was was different than you thought the answer would be. So, so after I left Cerner into 21, I went to a company called Hospital IQ, which was a partner of some of the Cerner, Siemens. We had some channels. We were about a 70-person company, and basically capitalizing on this AI wave to, help improve hospital operations, whether it's OR utilization, patient throughput. And then subsequently got bought by our larger competitor, was brokered by a private equity company, Bain. But I think what was interesting is just because Cerner was so big, and of course we were well ingrained in kind of the growth mindset, but there were many things that I thought when I got to the smaller company and where the investments were going was just light years ahead of where Cerner was at the time. Like truly double down in marketing and that top of the funnel growth and the investments we were making just in kind of how we're getting our word to market. I was floored. Like for years it was kind of like marketing was not a big priority, at least in the grand scheme that I saw when you were out trying to cultivate a new market at Cerner. It was a lot of, you would have investments, but it was totally different. And I think, what we had and seeing not only that, but you can make decisions faster at a smaller company. I mean, let's be honest. Right. I mean, if you needed to make a change for a client because it was really going to impact how things are going, you could pick up the phone and call the CEO, dude, I need to get this figured out. So obviously those types of things in a smaller company, there's less red tape. But at the end of the day, I learned about some things on the growth strategy, the marketing side that I didn't have as much background in coming in, that I came out much more skilled after I left, just because of where they were focused and how they were hyper focused on growing their company so they get to a point of going public, getting additional investment. I mean, it just where they were spending the money was totally eye opening. So
yeah, my recollection is at Cerner. I mean, we had some very talented people that were in the marketing organization, and marketing spanned a number of functions. But I think the reality is it was more product oriented. So it was content around the different solutions that we offered, either Millennium holistically or the capabilities underneath that. Whereas other companies, probably Hospital IQ, et cetera, they lean more into brand value messaging and awareness marketing, and then product marketing may come after that. And it is, I think you can make an argument either way, but certainly it is an educational experience to go sit on the other side of the table and see how that engine works and how you harness that engine from a go-to-market, pipeline building, pipeline execution process to ultimately get to your growth objectives.
And I think there's another thing I'd be remiss, and I'm sure some of your other folks have talked about this in the past, but when you get away from a large company with a big brand, those other investments do help you, especially when you're kind of getting your name out there. But the other thing that I was really taken back by, especially when I got to the smaller companies, and what I'm trying to inject a little bit here as we look ahead is, especially when, because point solutions are kind of falling out a little bit of favor at this point. They've kind of ebbed and flowed. And I think the ability to truly go at risk and create meaningful outcomes for clients in a smaller environment is much more, I guess, easy to do, but it resonates well. Like, you get all these companies calling on these hospitals and health systems on, oh, I got this widget, I got this. And it's like, they will talk to you if you are literally putting your skin in the game for something, for an outcome, or, hey, if this doesn't work, we're going to absolutely be able to, we're going to refund your money. We're going to go at risk for this, or you're not going to pay us. Like,
yeah. So it's not just ROI.
Correct.
It's actual skin in the game, risk-based pricing.
Correct. I mean, so I felt like that was another thing that was really interesting, is you could really come to the table and have a meaningful conversation with a CFO or a COO and be like, yeah, if this doesn't work, or we can't generate the outcomes we told you it was going to do, then you owe us nothing, or, you're off the hook. So it allowed us to really create a better value.
All the finance people who were listening are freaking out right now, or they've stopped listening. But it is a new world, right? It's not, you're not guaranteed the same way to be paid the same way. Although I would say there's tremendous upside. There's a win-win-win there for all parties if they're willing to engage, right? It was always, in the earlier days of risk-based pricing, it was who would actually do it, and were they actually good with both downside and upside risk?
True.
Because it needs to go both ways. It's always
I agree.
challenge.
You have to have skin in the game, but I think it's at least I found in these smaller companies, or companies that are really trying to kind of build a momentum and growth, I think that it was easier to create strategies that were definitely win-win and risk-based, and you were getting outcomes that were far different than selling something legacy that you just couldn't do that with. So it was kind of interesting.
Yeah,
Chris,
game on.
I want to pull you back for a moment to where you are now. MultiPlan, you are essentially building a new market. They as you described, you have some footprint, some capabilities, etc. But I'd be curious for you to guide our listeners. What's the biggest challenge and or thing that surprised you, that you thought one thing, but now you're 4.5 months in, you're like, oh crap, I can't, that I'm just blown away that this is what it is, or that I've got to go do, or what have you. What's the biggest surprise that you have being on the other side of stepping into this role with an organization like MultiPlan?
Well, I would, clearly we're in the process of standing up a mark, and I would say that the task is making sure we're fit for growth for 25. So, coming in, it was never about, hey, we got to go hit a 2-run homer in the first few months here. So I think it's always like, I want to go faster, because it's, you're still at the rate limiting elements of IP development, the things you guys are well aware of. But I think the interesting thing to me has been the reception so far to the early clients we've talked to, is that I think I'm validating that what we're doing is actually going to make a difference, and that people are interested in this market. I think, and by that, I mean, like, some of the early, the work that we're starting around price transparency and working with a lot of the data that has been mandated by the government that needs to be reported out from payers and providers, that we actually, if you harness this and use it, you can really help make a better outcome for patients, for the patient, for the provider, and how they kind of, and then the payer, and kind of how they're all working together to get a better, more equal footing in kind of what you're paying for and the quality of care you're getting. So I think, but at that point too, I mean, even though we're kind of getting to that, I mean, some of these terms, just like we had, they're becoming, commonplace. I mean, you've probably heard people talk about price transparency. All right, well, so it's going to become a crowded market. So we have to continue to innovate. So I'm pushing the team to continue to, we can't just be a 1 or 2 trick pony. If this is going to be a sustainable business, we got to continue to push and evolve the analytics, the data science, the things that we're doing, the outcomes that we're pushing to truly continue to be relevant over time. And I think that's what's going to pay off so I think we're headed in the right direction. Wish we could go faster, but I also would say we got to also continue, even though we're still in process of trying to go to 1.0 here by January. It's hey, we got to, what's 2.0, what's 3.0, what's 4.0.
Yeah.
So we gotta always be thinking ahead so that we're making this a meaningful and long-term thought versus just let's go create a new business.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that makes sense. And, one of the things that strikes me, and I have to imagine that this is both powerful and rewarding personally as you go out and engage with these clients, is that there is a reality that in the market there is information asymmetry on the payer side, meaning they know so much and they have so much resources to interrogate, analyze, and understand what all of this information is telling them, that they are to some degree at an unfair advantage when they then sit down and negotiate rates with a health system, with a rural health facility, with a health network, whatever that may be. And part of what I hear, Chris, that you're doing is you're bringing parity to the market. You're bringing tools, capabilities, and intelligence to organizations that can benefit the most to get back to parity and reduce the asymmetry, and more so get to bilateral understanding, and quite frankly, probably get compensated for the value that they're actually delivering in that community for that population to make it healthier.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, and part of it is I would say probably a degree aspirational as well. Just one of the things that attracted me about this company is we truly sit in a very unique position in healthcare. We are literally sitting between the payer and the provider, and then of course the patient, right? So it's, there's a lot of people still like, wow, how do we figure that out? But part of the things we have to do as we look ahead to next year, as we look at rebranding the company, for us to truly realize that vision between both, to reduce that abrasion, to truly sit on both sides of the fence, if you will. We've got some structural things we've got to go figure out so that we can operate and make sure that we're doing everything, to support the provider as well as the payer, because you're right. The optics there are very big. I think, but to your point, that is exactly what we are trying to solve, what we want to solve. I think we're in a very good position to do so. There's some things and investments we're going to have to do to probably fully realize that, like other companies that have probably tried to go down paths like us, to like a United with Optum, right? They've got to have things put in the right place. But I think, yes, I think we can play a very unique role with the data, the analytics, with our position in the market to truly help level that playing field across the board.
James, why don't you bring us home here for a second? And Chris, you may or may not be aware, but we've got a really spiritual question
very deep.
Very deep.
We're going to go deep.
And I want to just throw out an extra challenge. We've talked to people in Australia. We've talked to people in Boston. We've talked to people in Kansas City.
Yeah, like people in like Olathe,
Olathe, and Oklahoma.
That's basically like Australia, kind of.
That's
Kansas
right.
City.
So,
we go far, wide, and deep for this.
So we've got some very, very interesting answers to this. I'm confident you're going to give the right answer.
Yeah, yeah, you've done. You've entertained clients over the years, Chris, and when that client comes into town and they say, Chris, we want some of that Kansas City barbecue, where do you take them?
I tell you what, if I think the answer, and I know I need to give one answer, so I'll just Before I give the one answer, I will say it usually depends on whether or not it is a formal or informal type engagement.
Yep.
If it is a formal type engagement or more formal and you need to talk, I would say Jack Stack hands down.
That's fair.
If it is less formal, then I got to go
because nothing is more formal than onion rings on a pole.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, and dinosaur ribs.
Fred
Because
Flintstone style.
they're huge. I mean,
All
Well,
business.
Yak Stack is
Yeah.
the only place that I know of that you can actually get lamb ribs. Like, I don't think anywhere else does
Oh.
lamb ribs. I know I've
Okay.
got 2 former clients that that's why they wanted to go there. It's like
Wow.
they love lamb.
I
Okay.
didn't know that.
Did not know
Wow.
that. Okay, and then so your other part of the answer?
I would either have to say Joe's or Q39, probably somewhere in
Yeah.
there.
All right. Yeah.
Well,
We're trend. Those are trending.
yeah,
They're-
we're gonna have a winner when we get to the end of.
I would
season
guarantee
one.
you're probably getting a lot of answers that are probably in the same realm at some point.
Yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking the more we ask and we get these answers, the higher the likelihood they will sponsor us.
That's right. That's
so
right.
that's really our goal
Yeah.
here, is to get free barbecue.
I know who's
so-
not going to sponsor us, and it's the people in Nashville who don't have sauce. That's just not going to
Yeah,
happen.
it's that one place
that
that
one
somebody
place.
else stayed.
Yeah,
But we're
I
not
don't know.
going for the Nashville.
I don't even
market,
remember
so-
what it was.
Memphis?
Awesome, man.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Well, Chris-
dude, Chris, this has been amazing.
Yeah,
Awesome, dude.
absolutely. Thank you for the
No,
time.
I really,
Chris.
really appreciate you guys, and again, thank you for having me and everything you guys are doing here to elevate what's a really important industry to all of us. So thank you.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. We'll see you
Thank
soon.
you.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening. We are excited to bring new episodes out each week. We are incredibly grateful to our guests and our listeners. Let us know what you think by commenting on the episodes. The Counterweight is honored to be sponsored by The Echelon by Amy Teskey. The Echelon is intentional about building community and sharing expertise for healthcare technology sellers and leaders. The Echelon provides members curated content, education materials, and the ability to connect with peers and leaders specific to healthcare technology. Sales can be hard. It is made easier when you are part of a community that is focused on enabling you to be your best. Take an opportunity to invest in yourself. Join the Echelon, use the code Counterweight, and gain the ability to participate for the first 30 days at no cost. Thank you to Amy Teskey and the Echelon for your sponsorship. We are also proudly sponsored by the Upper Right Corner, which provides advice on strategic growth, including growth assessments and strategy, go-to-network planning, sales leadership, team coaching, and fractional leadership roles. For more, visit theupperrightcorner.com. Lastly, we are proud to be sponsored by Waypoint Healthcare Solutions. Waypoint Healthcare is a focused consulting organization helping health systems, providers, and organizations develop and implement patient engagement strategies. Waypoint HCS provides strategic consulting and patient engagement technology guidance and selection. Waypoint also helps support implementations and ongoing program management. For more, visit Waypoint HCS's LinkedIn page or waypointhcs.com. Thank you to our guests and our listeners. As always, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Subscribe, like, and follow, and we look forward to joining you again next Wednesday for another episode of The Counterweight.